Hello and welcome to today's edition of Daf Yomi, Talking Masechet Berkorot Daf 40 Amud B. The Gemara continues this version of the Mishnah, and there was also an incident where the lower jaw of the first one protruded beyond the upper jaw, and Rabbi Ben Gamliel asked the sages for a ruling. So what's the footnote? She'el Rabbi Shimon Ben Gamliel Chachamim. Although the standard text of the Gemara refers to Rabbi Shimon Ben Gamliel, the actual text of the Mishnah refers to Rabbi Gamliel. Therefore, many commentaries amend the text of the Mishnah state Rabbi Shimon Ben Gamliel to reflect that of the Gemara. And he said that is a blemish that enables the slaughter of the firstborn. The Gemara challenges, but it is with regard to the blemishes of a person that we learned in the Mishnah 44a. If his upper lip protrudes beyond the lower lip, Shefasa ve'elyona odefes al hatachtona. Repeats his upper lip protrudes over his lower lip, or his lower lip protrudes beyond the upper one. He's qualified performing the temple service as stated in the Mishnah 44a. The Rambam Sefer Vod, the Hilchot Beis Hamikdash 8:8. Or his lower lip protrudes beyond the upper lip, that is a blemish, and is only with regard to a person that it is written, another man of the seed of Aaron, Leviticus 22:4, which teaches that in order to be fit for the temple service, the priest must be a man who is equal to the seed of Aaron, i.e., he has the ordinary appearance like other priests. But this requirement is not with regard to an animal, and therefore an animal should not be considered a blemish if his lower lip protrudes beyond the upper lip. Rav Papa said in response, this is not difficult. This Mishnah is referring to a case where the lower jaw contains a bone that is longer than the upper jaw. So what does that mean? The isva etzem. If the upper jaw of a firstborn animal protrudes beyond its lower jaw, this is a blemish, on account of which one may slaughter a firstborn even nowadays, provided that there is a bone in that protrusion. And that's from the Torah, Yoreya Deya 309. This difficulty in our Papa's answer apparently applies to the opinions of all the Tanaim. Consequently, according to the Gemara's conclusion, when both Ila and the court that followed them ruled that a protruding jaw is considered a blemish, they were referring specifically to a case where there is a bone. The ruling of the Rambam with regard to this case indicates that this requirement of a bone is necessary only for a situation where a lower jaw protrudes beyond the upper jaw. When the upper jaw protrudes beyond the lower jaw, this is a case about which Ila testified in Yafna that when its mouth is similar to that of a pig, it's blemished even if there is no bone, and the court that followed them ruled in according to the opinion. See Chasti David on the Tosefta, the Kudei Halachot, and the Chazon Ish, in which case it is a blemish even for an animal, whereas that mission is referring to a case where the lower jaw does not contain a bone, and therefore it is a blemish only in the case of a person. With regard to the ear of the kid that was doubled, so what does that mean? Ozen Hagdi Haisa Kafula. The Rambam writes, if an ear was doubled into two, this is a blemish. Even in the case of a goat, it is originally hung down and appeared double. If there are two cartilages in the ear, that is a blemish, but if the ear has only one cartilage, it is fit. The Rambam bases this ruling on a version of the Mishnah and Baita that reads the opposite conclusion of that stated in the standard version in the Gemara. Test of Mishnah, see the base here of the Torah. With regard to the ear of a goat that was doubled over and looked like two ears, if it is only one bone, i.e. the ear is folded but not joined together, this is a blemish. If it is not all one bone, i.e. the two parts of the ear are separated, it is not a blemish. This ruling is according to the standard version of the Mishnah and the Baisite in the Gemara, and according to the explanation of Rashi. And that's in Rambam Sefer Vod, Hilchot Beis Hamikdash 7:3, Torah Yoreya 309. And it appeared like two ears. The sages said, when the additional ear is one bone, i.e. it has its one cartilage, it is a blemish. When it does not have its own bone, it is not a blemish. So what's the footnote? Rashi's version of the Mishnah reads, and if it is not one bone but two, it is not a blemish. According to the explanation, when the Mishnah states when it is one bone, it means that the ear is folded over but made attached. And when it states if it is not one bone, it means that the two parts of the ear are separated. Rashi further writes that this is difficult to understand the reasoning behind this halacha, since reverse appears more logical, as an additional limb should be considered a blemish. See commentary on Rabbi Avadia Bartanoa. Indeed, the Rambam reads the Mishnah as saying merely, when it is one bone, this is not a blemish. He explains in the opposite manner that when it appears as a single piece, this is not a blemish. It's only when it looks like two ears, as each piece has its own cartilage, that is a blemish. The interpretation can also be inferred from the Tosefta 4:13, as the original text there is the opposite of the text of the Bible Society of the Gemara here. Rabbi Hanani ben Gamliel says, in the case of the tail of a kid that is similar to that of a pig, Zanav Hadi Shehu Doma Leshel Chazir. The Rambam writes that if the tail of a goat was soft and hanging like that of a pig, that is a blemish, according to the opinion of Rabbi Hanani ben Gamliel. The Ravid writes that according to the version of the Gemara possessed by the Rambam, Rav Papa does not refer to the tail as round, kiricha, but soft, v'chicha, Yilech Mishnah. The Torah writes, if the tail of a goat is round like that of a pig, this is a blemish, even if it is of regular thickness. This follows the standard version of the Gemara Rashi explanation. The Rambam Sefer Vod Hilchot Yisei Mizbeach 2:4, the Torah Yoadea 309. Or that one is so short that it does not have three joints, that is a blemish. If the tail of an animal is short and that has a blemish, what is defined as short? In the case of a goat, if it has one joint, it is short. If it has two joints, it is thick. With regard to a lamb, it is a blemish if there are two joints, but it is fit if it has three. The Torah includes these in his list of those unequivocal blemishes for which one may slaughter a first one in the present time. Torah Yoadea 309. Gemara, the sages taught, in a case where the mouth of a firstborn animal is swollen, the Rambam writes, if the mouth is swollen because it was born in this way, that is a blemish. But if it was swollen due to the wind, that is not a blemish, says in the Bible. The Torah writes, if the lips open properly, but it cannot open its mouth because the cheekbones are adhered to each other, this is a blemish. But if the lips open to the same extent as the cheeks, even if neither open in a proper manner, it is not a blemish. The ruling of the Torah follows the interpretation of Rashi in accordance with the version of the text that reads, due to the gap. And we say for Vod Hilchot Beis Hamikdash 7:7, Torah Yoadea 309. And likewise, if his legs are swollen, Ragla Mevulamos, the Rambam writes, if the legs are swollen because it was born this way, that is a blemish. If they are swollen due to the wind, it is not a blemish, as stated in the Bible. The Torah writes, in the case where the hooves of an animal's forelegs, some say its hind legs, the bar, are narrow rather than wide in the usual manner. If the flesh is narrow and the bone wide and protrudes outward, this is a blemish. But if the flesh and bone are the same, i.e. they are both narrower than usual, it is not a blemish, according to the explanation of Rashi. And that's the Rambam Sefer Vod Hilchot Beis Hamikdash 7:9 to Yoadea 309. Rashi said two interpretations of the term Balaam. I've lost the footnote here. The term Balaam. Either it means narrow, see also Beina Gershom or swollen. Elsewhere, the Rashi states that Balaam means closed. In other words, the animal cannot open its mouth, see Chunin 107b. But some commentators explain Balaam here in a similar manner, which may also be similar to Rashi's first interpretation as amounted to now to open, say Tosfot and the Rosh. The following distinction applies. If it is swollen due to the wind, i.e. it's simply swelled up, it is not a blemish. If it is swollen due to a particular large bone, Mechamas haruch, mechamas ha'etzem, Rashi's version of the text reads, due to the gap, ha'reva, and he explains that if the animal's mouth is ordinary in form, but it lacks sufficient room to open wide, this is not a blemish. It is only if it cannot open its mouth because the bones are closed tight, while only its lips spread apart, that is a blemish. Similarly, if its legs are narrow but the ratio between the size of the flesh and that of the bone is regular, that is not a blemish. Whereas if the bone is too small relative to the flesh and flesh spreads out, it is a blemish. As noted by Rashi, the standard version of the text, due to the wind, harua, is appropriate only according to the interpretation that Balaam means swollen. In other words, if the unusual appearance is not due to a bone, the result of a disease or infection such as ditza, see Bates 22a, that is not a blemish. And the Shita Mechubeses reads the word win, zika, in Rashi instead of ditza. The Rambam indicates that the phrase translated here as due to the bone etzem actually means due to itself atzmo, i.e. the animal is born that way rather than suffering from some illness. But if it is a doubled, in the case where it has one cartilage, this is a blemish. In the case it has two cartilages, this is not a blemish. The Mishnah teaches that Rabbi Gamliel says. And Gamliel, there is a discrepancy between the citation of the Mishnah by the Gemara and the text of the Mishnah itself, similar to the discrepancy noted with regard to Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. The standard text cites Rabbi Gamliel as the Tana who made the statement, while the text of the Mishnah cited Rabbi Hananiah ben Gamliel. Here too some alter the text to read Rabbi Hananiah ben Gamliel to conform with the Mishnah. Masoret Hashas. With regard to the tail of a kid that is similar to that of a pig, that is a blemish. Our Papa says, do not say that it is a blemish only where its tail is thin like that of a pig. Rather, if it is round curly like a pig's tail, even though it is thick like the tail of a goat, this is considered a blemish. The Mishnah stated, or if the tail of a kid is so short that it does not have 3 joints, that is a blemish. Rav Huna says, in the case of a tail of a kid, if it has 2 joints, that is a blemish. If it has 3 joints, that it is not a blemish. With regard to a lamb, if it has 3 joints, that is a blemish, and if it has 4 joints, it is not a blemish. The Gemara raises an objection from a Baita. In the case of a kid, if its tail has 1 joint, that is a blemish. If it has 2 joints, it is not a blemish. If it has 3 joints, it is not a blemish. The Gemara concludes this is a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Rav Huna. The Gemara comments, and Rav Huna issued his statement because the Mishnah misled him. He thought that from the fact that the first clause is referring to a kid whose tail is similar to that of a pig, it can be referred to that the latter clause, with its mentioned 3 joints, is also referring to a kid, but it's not so. Well, the first clause is referring to a kid, but the latter clause is referring to a lamb, as explained in the Baita. Hanina ben Atigonos says that these are blemished animals, or that has a wart. Beles, a wart. This is possibly referring to a dermoid, a congenital condition very commonly found in cows, which is characterized by a cyst that contains within it developmentally mature skin. Such a piece can be pigmented or not, cystic or otherwise, or with or without hair. Alternatively, this wart may be one of the many types of growth that are not congenital, which appear in various forms, some of which have undergone keratinization, the formation of a hard layer known as keratin in its eyes, and one where the bone of its foreleg or the hind leg was damaged. What's the footnote? In a case of a visible bone in which there is a crack, that is a blemish, as these are all included in the category of maimed, harus animals mentioned in Leviticus 22:22. This halacha is according to the opinion of Hanina ben Atigonos, as in the Gemara 41a. Says the Mishnah, this is an unequivocal blemish for which one may slaughter a firstborn even in the present time when there are no experts in these matters. And say the 7:9 Torah Yehudah 309. And one where the bone of its mouth, i.e. its jaw, was dislocated. Nifrach asma shel piv, if the bone of the mouth of an animal to which the teeth are attached was damaged, this is a blemish, as maintained by Rabbi Hanina ben Atigonos. This follows an alternative version of the text according to which Rabbi Hanina ben Atigonos is referring to a damaged nifgam bone of this kind. One may slaughter a firstborn on account of such a blemish even nowadays. The Torah Yehudah 309. An animal with one of its eyes large and one small. If one eye of an animal is as large as that of a calf, while the second is as small as that of a goose, it is a blemish. This ruling is in accordance with the opinion of Hanina ben Atigonos and the Brisa cited in Gemara. This is considered an unequivocal blemish for which one may slaughter an animal even in the present time. When the difference in size is detectable by sight, but not if it's detectable only by being measured. Rabbi Yehuda says an animal is blemished if, with regard to its two testicles, one is as large as two of the other. What does that mean? If one testicle of an animal was larger than the other, that is not a blemish, in accordance to the opinion of the rabbis, Torah Yehuda 309. The rabbis do not agree with his opinion. The Gemara, the Mishnah teaches that if an animal has a wart in its eyes, it's blemished. The Gemara asks, is that to say that a wart is considered a blemish? And one can raise a contradiction from the Mishnah in 41a, and these are the blemishes that one does not slaughter the firstborn due to them, neither in the temple nor in the rest of the country, as these are not considered full-fledged blemishes. An animal with boils that are moist inside and out, and one with warts. The Gemara responds, and how can you understand that a wart is not a blemish? After all, wart is written in the Torah in its list of blemishes, see Leviticus 22:22. Rather, it is not difficult, as that Mishnah, which states that a wart is not a full-fledged blemish, is referring to a blemish on the animal's body, whereas this mention of a wart in the Torah and the Mishnah here is referring to a wart in its eye. The Gemara asks, now consider that the verse is written in an unspecified manner. What difference is it to me if the wart is on its body, and what difference is it to me if the wart is in its eye? How is this distinction derived from the verse? The Gemara suggests an alternative explanation. Rather, it's not difficult, as this is referring to a wart that has a bone, and that is referring to a wart that does not have a bone. If a priest or an animal has a wart on the body, and there is a bone inside it, it is a blemish. And that is the type of wart mentioned in the Torah, Leviticus 22:22. If it does not contain a bone, then it is not a blemish, even if it has a hair growing from it. Rambam Sefer Roda Hilchot Beit HaMikdash 7:10, Torah Yehuda 309. The Gemara elaborates, the wart mentioned in the verse and the Mishnah here is one that has a bone, whereas the wart addressed by the Mishnah there is one that does not have a bone. Consequently, if the wart is in the eye, it is a blemish, as stated in the verse and the Mishnah here, but if it's on its body, it is not a blemish, although the animal is disqualified being sacrificed according to the ruling of the Mishnah here. There. The Gemara asks, with regard to a wart that does not have a bone and is on the body, is the animal disqualified to be sacrificed? It is merely hanging flesh, as we learned in the Mishnah 45b, that Rabbi Eliezer says, with regard to those with flesh or skin that hangs from their body. If one's skin and flesh hang from his body, or if the moisture from his skin hangs from his body, he is unfit for temple service. This blemish does not apply to animals. Allah is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Elazar, Rambam Sefer Roda Hilchot Beit HaMikdash 8:15. Such a blemish disqualifies a person. With regard to an animal, it is fit. Rather, both this mission here and that mission are referring to a wart in the animal's eye, and this is not difficult, as this mission is referring to a wart in the black of the eye, the pupil, whereas that mission is referring to a wart in the white of the eye. The Gemara asks, it has been established that there are no blemishes in the white part of the eye, which indicates that the animal is not disqualified to be sacrificed on the altar. Rather, both this statement that there are no blemishes in the white of the eye and that ruling on the Mishnah that a wart disqualifies the animal from being sacrificed are referring to a wart in the white part of the eye. Ella eating beloved. Tosfos suggests a different version of the text. Both this and that are referring to a wart in the black part of the eye. Accordingly, any wart in the white of the eye, even one that has hair, does not disqualify an animal from being sacrificed. The Rambam, although apparently understood the Gemara based on the straightforward understanding of the son's text, consequently, its answer indicates that the principle where there is no blemishes in the white of the eye does not apply to warts. And if the wart has hair, not only is it disqualified from the altar, as stated in the Mishnah later on, but it is even considered a full-fledged blemish to the Radbas. And as Laka says, it is not difficult. This is referring to a wart that has a hair. If an animal has a wart without hair in the white of its eye, it may not be sacrificed, as this is not the optimal manner of bringing an offering. Nevertheless, it may not be redeemed, but it must be left to agree to the verse of blemish according to the opinion of Reish Lakish, Rambam Sefer Roda Hilchot Yisur Midbech 2:8. And therefore the animal is unfit for the altar. I said that, as for the Mishnah here, which ruled that a wart is a full-fledged blemish, it is referring to a wart in the pupil of the eye as explained. The Mishnah teaches with regard to an animal where one of its eyes is large and one is small, that this is a blemish. In this regard, it is taught in a Braita. When the Mishnah states the term large, it means the eye as large as the eye of a calf, and when it states the term small, it means it is as small as that of a goose. The diameter of a goose's eye is about 12 millimeters, while that of a calf is roughly 32 millimeters. The Mishnah teaches, or one of its ears is large and one is small, which is detectable by sight, but not if it is detectable only by being measured. Rabbi Yehuda says, an animal is blemished if with regard to its two testicles, one is as large as the other, as two of the other, but the rabbis did not agree with his opinion. The Gemara asked, and according to the rabbis, how large can the difference between the two testicles be without this discrepancy being considered blemish? The Gemara answers that it is taught in the Bible that the Chayim say, even if the second small testicle is no bigger than a bean, the Rambam maintained that this statement does not refer to the size of the testicles, as may be inferred from the Gemara, but to the size of the ear. The Tosefta 4:7 explicitly states that this refers to the testicles. The animal is fit. Mishnah. In the case of the tail of a calf that does not reach the leg joint, la'alkov. So what's the footnote? If the tail of a calf is so short that it does not reach the upper joint that connects the knee to the thigh, that is a blemish. In addition, it is an unequivocal blemish for which one may slaughter the firstborn even in the present time, when there are no experts in these matters. The ruling is not in accordance with the opinion of the Rambam, who does not list his condition as the blemish. The Torah Yodeya 309. Alkov, the leg joint. This word beginning with the letter ayin is similar to a homonym beginning with the letter aleph, al-kuva, which means knee. The sages said it is a blemish because all growth of calves is in this manner. Rashi explains that the statement of the sages is cited in explanation of why this is a blemish, as indicated by the Tosefta 4:14. In other words, if the tail of a calf is not long enough to reach the leg joint, which is a blemish, as is the manner of calves that their tails extend beneath the leg joint as they grow. By contrast, in the Rambam's commentary on the Mishnah, the statement of the sages is understood in the opposite manner. They disagree with the early ruling of the Mishnah and maintain that a short tail in a calf is not a blemish, as it will gradually grow. Based on this interpretation, the Rambam does not include this blemish in the blemishes see the Beis Yosef. As long as they grow, their tails are extended beneath the leg joint, which is the leg joint about which the sages spoke. And Chanina ben Tigona says they are referring to the leg joint that is in the middle of the thigh. Thank you for listening, and I wish you a very good day. All the best. Bye.